Good morning, everyone. Welcome to LisaBug Yoga for Posture. And today what I need you to grab, if you don't have one at your mat area, is either a yoga blanket, small regular blanket like a throw that you would throw onto your couch, or a larger bath towel, and then maybe a little smaller towel. So what we're doing with yoga posture, the last 2 weeks, we worked on the lower portion of our spine and how that posture sits based on tight muscles in our body. So week 1 of yoga for posture, we worked on stretching the hip flexors because tight hip flexors draws our pelvis into an anterior tilt this way, gives us a big low back sway. On week 2, we worked on stretching the hamstrings, which can give us a posterior tilt and causes a slumping this direction. So this week, we are going to take the upper back and pull those shoulders back and expand through the chest, stretching these tight muscles of the chest and the shoulders and strengthening the upper back to get really good upper back posture. This position here can be called upper crossed syndrome. So if you see people that have a rounded shoulder, a hunched back, and a forward head position, this is called upper cross syndrome. And it can develop over time. Sometimes it starts just a little and we don't even know it's creeping in. And because of our life, the way we're always at computers, we're hovering over our phones, younger and younger ages now, they're seeing the beginning of that upper crust syndrome. So we're going to work on that today. And what I'm going to start with is that blanket that I mentioned to you, or a nice big bath towel. And we are going to do 2 static stretches before we start our practice. So what I'd like you to do is to take your blanket or your towel and fold it in half so that you have maybe a couple of feet. You can either do it this way or a little bit longer, depending on what you have. And we are going to make a blanket roll or a towel roll. And when you roll this up, I want you to make it really a tight roll. So sometimes what I do when I roll my blanket is I give it a fold first, which is maybe about 6 to 8 inches. I'm going to fold this and really smooth it out. And then from the edge of that fold, just like a sleeping bag, I'm going to start to roll this into a really tight, round roll. And this is something we all have at home, so we're able to make this blanket roll. Now, when we are on this blanket stretching, if it's too high, let's say you have a really thick blanket and you've rolled it and it's really high, like a foam roller, and it's too high, you can simply let some of it out so it's not as thick for you to stretch. And so what we're going to do with this blanket roll is I'm going to place it horizontally across my mat, and this is going to rest right in this mid-back area. So for ladies, where the edge of your bra line is here, that's where we're going to place it. For guys, if you think about where you might wear a heart rate monitor across your rib cage, that's where that blanket is going to go. Now, this may cause your head to hang back when you are in this position. So you might want to take another little towel and roll it up to give yourself a pillow, or take a yoga block and place that there for your head to relax on. So I want you to get comfortable because we're going to stay here for a few minutes. Also, when you think about the placement of this blanket roll, your arms should be over the top of where the roll is, not under the bottom. So if I was in this position here and my arms are under it, it's not in the right spot. So take a moment to get that blanket roll right in that mid upper back region, and then come into a relaxed place. So you might notice this has the look of a certain yoga posture or pose called fish pose. And this is a supported fish. So when we're in this position, it does give us quite a big back bend. So I want you to feel comfortable with that. And if you have your legs extended out long and that's not comfortable on your lower back, Go ahead and bend your knees. Walk your feet out a little bit wider than hips distance and let your knees fall in together to touch. That might feel a little bit better to you. Or you can bring your feet right up onto your chair at home. And so our goal here is to passively allow this posture to come into place by the use of our prop, by the use of gravity, by the use of slowing our breath down and just letting go. So this can be a yin pose if we hold it maybe 2 to 3 minutes and work into those muscles and connective tissue. It can also be considered a restorative pose where we can hold this 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes maybe and just relax and focus on the breath and use this pose for a little bit of quiet meditation. Today we'll be on the lower end here on our live class because I've got a lot to get to today. But if you're doing this later on YouTube and you want to hit the pause button, stay here as long as you like. That would be fantastic. So now as we breathe, what I want you to do is on the inhalation, I want you to try to expand your rib cage outward and upward. And this is going to help you increase that stretch. So inhaling through the nose, a nice deep breath, expand the ribs. And exhaling either through the nose or mouth, let the ribs fall back down. I just want you to notice where you feel any tightness. It might be in your pectoral muscles here in the fronts of the chest. It might be all the way out into the fronts of the shoulders and maybe even into the arms. And speaking of the arms, you can just place them comfortably wherever you would like. Out to the side, maybe even above the head in that goalpost position might be nice. But you want to have your arms connected to the mat and not just hanging in space. So if you're really tight and your arms are floating up here, I want you to make a change so that you can relax your arms onto the floor. And let's just take 2 more breaths, a deep inhalation, just preparing us for our practice today. Exhaling that breath completely. And 1 more breath, allowing the ribs to really float. And exhale. And then I want you to consider the best way for you to come out of this position. You might like to roll over onto your side and press yourself up. You might have the strength in your core just to reach your arms and extend. And to reach the arms forward, tuck the chin, and roll right up off of that blanket roll. And then we have 1 more stretch in this position with our blanket. We are going to turn the blanket 90 degrees. So instead of going across the ribs horizontally, it's going to go straight down the middle of your spine. Now, depending on how long your blanket roll is, you can have your hips down here on the floor, or you can sit your hips up on the blanket roll. So I'll let you decide which feels best for your body. If your hips are down on the floor, you're going to have a little bit more of a back bend in the lower back. And then lay yourself back. And again, if your head is hanging way back behind you, opening up the throat, it's okay. That's a part of fish pose, but if that doesn't feel comfortable for you and your head is not supported, I want you to place a little bit of a blanket roll or your block underneath the back of the head. And then again, your arms can be down by your sides. We can open them out like a T or in our goalpost position. And we'll hold here and breathe. We can also do this on a stiffer surface. Sometimes we can lay on our foam roller. But what's nice about the blanket is it has some give. So it starts to take the shape of our spine and support the little curves that we have in our back. And it's a little bit more comfortable too in terms of the hardness of the material it's made up, so we can really relax here and enjoy this stretch. And again, we'll come back to that really deep breathing pattern where as we breathe in, we fill the space in the sides of our ribs and in the front of our ribs and create a nice expansion. Stretching through the intercostal muscles, those little tiny muscles that separate each one of our ribs. And noticing where you're feeling tightness, where you're feeling that stretch occur. And maybe trying to send the breath into those areas. And that just means to try to fill that space in your lungs. So if you're feeling a stretch way up high into the lungs, try to get that breath there to really expand. And again, if your lower back isn't feeling comfortable with legs straight, we can bend those knees, finding a comfortable place. And try not to fight the stretch, just soften. And we're doing this first so that we can get a little bit of pre-stretch before we start to work deeper into our chest expansion poses. We have a little bit more range of motion to start with. If you have, 5-10 extra minutes every day, especially first thing in the morning, these are wonderful stretches to do, especially if you feel like you're getting a little bit of that upper cross syndrome, the rounded upper back, the sloping shoulders forward, and the jutting of the chin into that forward head position. So for today, we'll take 2 more breaths here. And 1 more, very slow, very expansive. Exhaling completely. Then again, consider how you'd like to come out of this pose. So last time I rolled up, this time I'm going to roll onto my side. And then use my arms to press up and away. Let's come just to a nice cross-legged position. You can remove your blanket roll, set it off to the side. And then find your yoga strap. We're going to do some shoulder threading. So we are going to move the arms through a nice full range of motion and make a circular movement. Actually, the first time, let's do it without the strap because I want you to feel comfortable. So bring your arms forward like you're holding onto your strap. Take a nice breath in and lift the arms up and then circle them back behind you. You're going very slowly with a full range of motion. And then we'll come the other direction. So I'm just making a nice full circle, sweeping up and back and up and forward. So this is your option to do if, number 1, you don't have a yoga strap or something that you can use, like a necktie or a belt. And then if you'd like to try it with your yoga strap, you want to take your hands pretty wide on the strap. And I have my strap together and looped, but I'm going to go ahead and unloop that yoga strap just so that I have a little bit more room to move. Actually, it's going to be stuck in there, so I'm not going to worry about it. I think I have enough room to move. So we'll bring that in the front. Take a nice big inhalation, sweep it up and back and around. And going slowly. So I'd like you to put the breath with this because we can expand the ribs as we go. So as the arms are coming up, inhale. As they're coming behind you, exhale. As they're coming up, inhale. And forward, exhale. And just maybe 3 or 4 more, depending on the speed that you're moving. And if you're using your yoga strap and you get stuck, you can stop and then just go back forward again. You don't have to go all the way back around. With this, there should be no strain. I want you to feel a stretch, but not painful. And let's get one more. And relax. Now, learning about our shoulder girdle. If our shoulders are rounded forward, this is called shoulder protraction. So the opposite of this is to pull the shoulders back, and this is shoulder retraction. So we're going to do protraction and retraction with our yoga strap. So I want you to separate your hands about shoulders width or a little wider. Put some resistance on the band, so I'm pulling outward. And then protract your shoulders, which means I'm going to round and reach forward. And then retract and pull back. So you're finding a little pinch between your shoulder blades. Protract and retract. I'll just do this one more. Protract and retract, and hold this retraction. Take a little twist to one side. Keep those shoulder blades retracted. Look over your shoulder. Come back to the center, keeping the shoulder blades retracted back. Twist to the other side. And come to the center. Relax your arms. So they should feel like you're getting a little bit of work here because you're pulling out and retracting back. So there's this consistent working of that muscle group. So now let's take the yoga strap and bring it as far above the head as you feel comfortable. Now, if I lift my shoulders up, this is called shoulder girdle elevation. And then if I go down, it's known as depression. So we're going to go through those 2 ranges of motion. Elevate up, press down, depression. 2 more, elevation and depression. 1 more, elevate. Then depress down and hold this depression. And I want you to notice which muscles in your body are pulling your shoulders down. It's usually primarily your latissimus dorsi, your lats. So keep that shoulder girdle depression and take a side stretch over to the right without letting the shoulder blades elevate. Come back to the center. Stay in depression and side bend to the left. And back to center. And release the arms down. You should be feeling a little bit of fatigue again in those shoulders through that work. Now, if we combine retraction and depression, that gives us wonderful posture. So if I'm in protraction and elevation, this is kind of known as the Minnesota shrug, right? When we're outside cold. We hug in, we try to stay warm, our shoulders come up, our shoulders come forward because we're cold. So what we want to do is reverse that. So without using your strap, I want you to come into retraction and depression. So shoulder blades are retracted back, they're pressing down, and then bring your arms into W arms or kind of our goal post. So I have my elbows a little lower than my shoulders. I'm pulling my elbows back as far as I can. So I really want you to open up your chest and press your shoulders down. Now, with a breath in, reach your arms up without letting your shoulder blades move. Just your arms are going to lift. Shoulder blades are still staying down. And then as you exhale, pull your elbows back. So if you notice, sometimes it's really easy to let your whole shoulder blades come up when you reach your arms. It's very hard to separate your arms from your shoulder girdle, but it can be done. So keep those shoulder blades down as you reach your arms up. Inhale, you're still in depression, and pull back. We'll do this twice more. And we are going to be putting this into our warrior poses today. One more time, reach up and retract back. Hold this. Shoulder blades are down. Shoulder blades are pulling back as far as you can. Abdominals pulled in. One more breath. Breathe in. And breathe out. And relax your arms down. Excellent. Okay, let's come to a stand at the top of your mat. And we'll come into a nice mountain pose. So we're going to do that movement we just did, standing in mountain. So bring the arms forward. Elbows are slightly lower than the shoulder blades. And if you're not sure if you're in depression, go ahead and elevate your shoulder blades up and then push them as far down as you can go, away from your ears, and then pull your shoulder blades back as far as you can go. And notice the sun sometimes makes you feel like you're arching your back, so pull your abdominals in. Then what I want to move from is from this position, just close the palms to touch in front of your chest without losing retraction of the shoulder blades. Very difficult. So keep your shoulder blades back, back, back as your hands come together. So in other words, I don't want you to round. Keep your shoulder blades back and then expand. So your arm bones, your humerus, are just moving in the socket without affecting what we call the shoulder girdle, without moving your shoulder blades. They move independently of each other if we really focus and concentrate. Now, as your hands come back together, sink into chair, but keep your shoulder blades back. So our tendency is to round. Pull shoulder blades back, then step the right foot back into warrior one as you open and expand. And this can be a very short stance, warrior one. Close the palms back to touch, chair. Shoulder blades are still back. Step the left foot back, warrior one, and expand. Now I want to put the breath with this. So as you step in, you're in an exhalation. As you step back, you inhale and expand through the ribs. Exhale to close. Combining the breath with the movement to create more space into those tight muscles. Let's do 2 more on each side, right, left, right, left. This is great for balance and control. 1 more each side. And then we'll step back on that right side and hold and breathe. So since I'm using the muscles of the lats to keep my shoulder girdles pressing down, which is called depression, and retracting back, called retraction, We've got those muscles working isometrically, and we've talked about what is reciprocal inhibition, meaning when I'm tightening the muscles of my back, the opposing muscles have to relax, which in this case is the fronts of the chest, the pectorals, and the fronts of the shoulders, those anterior deltoids. Take one more breath here. And then staying in your warrior two, just bring your arms forward, but keep your shoulder blades down and back. So we have to really train ourselves to have our arms in front of us without rounding our shoulders forward. So retract those shoulder blades back, push down, and imagine you're pushing down against a hard surface. And then push your arms back behind you as far as you can go. And then come forward. Press back. And come forward. And we'll do this a few more times. If you'd like to work on balance, I'm going to give you the option of coming up off the back leg into a modified warrior three. So as you bring your hands back, shift your body weight forward and lift off your back foot and pull your shoulder blades back and down. And then as your arms come forward, set that foot back on the floor. Reach and push back and balance. You could do this with hand weights, which would give you a little bit more resistance, but I want you to think about working the muscles without any extra workload, just by tightening them. There's so much we can do by activating the muscles isometrically. And then come back to your warrior three. Hold, hold, hold. And then to warrior one. Press the palms. Step the back foot into chair. We'll repeat this on the other side. So we'll step back into our warrior one with the left foot. Chest expansion, pull back. I'm already feeling just a little bit of almost tenderness in this stretch. I can tell I'm getting beyond my normal range of motion here. So I want you to really rely on what you're feeling in your body to know how far back to pull. Breathe, breathe. And then we'll move our shoulder blades, or not our shoulder blades, but our arm bones as we come forward, touching the palms, and open, pull back. Come forward, and open and pull back. We've got to train our arm bones to move without moving the shoulder girdles. One more. Eye gaze is straight forward, good posture. And then we'll reach the arms forward. Your palms are down, but try not to let your shoulders round forward. So pull them back into retraction, press them down into depression, and then push your arms behind you, lifting them up as far as you can against an imaginary resistance, and bring them forward. And there's a lot of work going on here in your abdominals too. So feel your core engaging. A transverse abdominis. And then you can keep doing this without coming into balance, or if you'd like to balance, the arms go forward in warrior one. They sweep back as you shift your body weight forward, lift off the back foot. Balance, keep pressing your arms behind you. And you can decide how fast you go from one position to the other. I want you to have some good control. Joining the breath and the movement. Let's get a couple more here. Recheck to make sure your shoulder blades are not elevating. And then let's pause in our warrior three, holding. Really find the muscles that we're working here, shoulder blades down and pulling back. We hear that a lot in yoga and other classes, but do we really concentrate on it and do it? And then step back into your warrior one. Press the palms at your heart. Step forward into chair. Make sure your shoulder blades are down and back. And then rise up to mountain, arms by your side. Open your palms forward and slightly pull your shoulder blades back. Engage through your core. 3 breaths. This should feel really long through the spine, really tall and proud. And 1 more breath. And then relax. So we're going to do a pretty good stretch for the front of the shoulder. If you have any shoulder injuries, you might want to do this at the wall. And what this will look like at the wall is you'll bring your arm with your hand slightly lower than your shoulder, and you're just going to turn your body to the side until you feel like you have the stretch that you want. And you'll hold here. So I want to give anybody the option to stay standing up and go find a wall to do this rather than to come down onto the floor. If you'd like to come down onto the mat, you can start with your right arm first. Come down onto the floor, onto your belly. If you need a little pillow for your head, you might like to have your towel or your blanket. And put your arm out to the side, your right arm, and slightly lower than your shoulder. And then you're just going to push yourself over onto your side. So I'm going to do the other arm too, so you can see from that direction what it's looking like. I have my arm out, and I'm going to roll onto my side. So I'm using the opposite arm to help me to guide how far back I'm rolling. So this hand here, I've got it pressed into the mat, and I'm using it to see how far I think I can push my body back. Now with your lower body, you can bend your knees and just rest here, or you can extend your arms straight and pull your heels back and come into a Swan Dive position. And if you'd like, you can lift that top arm up. Now I've got my head lifted and suspended, but you can bring that towel underneath and support the side of your head. And let's take 3 breaths here. If it feels like too much stretch, use this top arm to guide yourself back over toward your belly. 1 more breath. And then use that left hand to help guide you back over. If you're standing up and you're using the wall, then you're going to place your left arm along the wall with your hand slightly lower than your shoulder. So we don't want the arm up really high because that puts the shoulder kind of in a compromised position. So I'm going to open it out and slide it down a little bit. Then use your right hand to start to roll yourself over any amount onto your side. It might be a little. You can bend your knees. This is more supportive if you have the knees forward and bent. Or you can extend your legs straight. Lift the legs off the floor. Pull the heels back so you're in Swan Dive position. And I am retracting even the top shoulder blade, pulling it back. Make sure this feels okay for you, whichever position you're in. Let's take 3 more breaths. If you ever feel too much stress or pain, release that stretch any amount you need to. One more breath in. Then use that right hand on the floor to guide yourself back over to your belly. So if you did those stretches on the wall, I want you to join us to come down onto your back, onto your belly. And I'm using my little hand towel here to support my forehead. You can also just place your hands crossed and stacked as a pillow for your forehead. And then bring your arms into that W position, kind of that goal post. So I have my elbows bent about 90 degrees. And then retract and depress your shoulder blades. Then use the strength of your back muscles to lift your chest up off the floor. We are going to reach the arms forward without protracting and elevating the shoulder blades, and then pull them back and down. And reach forward and pull back. This can be really tough and really intense. Try to keep the chest up a little bit so we're working those back muscles. And as you pull back, you can even lift up a little higher. Bring the chest up off the floor. And one more time. And then set the hands back down to the mat and the forehead and relax. Whew, that even got my heart rate up just a little bit. That's super intense work. Now bring your hands next to the sides of your body with your palms up facing the ceiling. And we are going to do the same thing. So lift the head and the chest slightly off the mat. And then using the muscles of the back, lift up and press your arms up toward the ceiling as high as you can. And then as you come back down, you'll lower your arms slightly. And then lift up, up, up. Shoulder blades retracted and depressed. And we're breathing. Legs are active. They can be hips distance apart or tight together. Toes can be pointed, feet can be flexed. And let's do two more. Try not to lift your chin too far forward. I want your head to be pretty neutral. This is a modification of locust. As we come up on this last one, let's hold. Check to make sure your shoulder blades haven't lifted up or rounded forward. Keep them retracted and depressed. Keep those arms up behind you. Two more breaths. One more breath. And relax down. Let the palms of your hands slide underneath the fronts of your shoulders and give yourself a push back to extended child's pose, Balasana. We can take the arms and really reach them out. Drop your forehead down to the mat. And notice, do you feel tight in your lats here? Try not to let those shoulder blades hunch up by your ears, but keep them retracted and pressing down. Two more breaths. And then we'll come up to all fours. Hands and knees. So that was extended child's pose. I'm going to give you the option of giving this a little bit more of a back bend by doing Anahatasana, which is also known as puppy pose. So your knees and your hips are going to stay in the same plane. So the hips stay over the knees, and start to walk your hands in front of you as far as you can walk them. And then sink your forehead down to the floor and lift your sitting bones up to the ceiling. So I'm tipping my pelvis forward. There's a little bit of a back bend here. Now, some of you might not be able to get the forehead to the mat. That's where your blanket or your yoga block come in handy to give you support. There's others of you that could go deeper than your forehead. So the next option is to bring your chin down or your chest down to the mat. And let's hold here 3 breaths. Big stretch through the lats. Shoulder blades are still pressing down and slightly back. And last breath in. And then we'll slowly walk those hands right back underneath us to our all fours position. We'll be coming into camel, so if you need some padding for your knees, you can bring your blanket forward to kneel on or make a little fold in your mat. And then we'll come up to this camel position. And before we start, I just want you to maybe close your eyes for a second. Notice after our work what you're feeling in your shoulders. Maybe a little bit more freedom in range of motion. Making sure you're not feeling any pain at all. And then working on our camel pose, which just brings us into a nice spinal extension and chest expansion. Take your fists and place them right behind your sacrum here. You can also just bring your hands to your hips if that feels more comfortable. Or some of you might like to place flat palms back on either side of the pelvis into that sacral area. So what I want you to do first is to pull your shoulders down and back and pull your elbows back behind you as far as you can go by activating the muscles of the upper back. Now, without using without bending through the lower back any more than it is, I want you to keep that stable. Start to lift your heart up to the ceiling. So we're trying to extend through the upper back where we get rounded in our posture. Keep your abdominals engaged. Your toes in the back can be tucked under if you like that, or your feet can be flat. And slightly squeeze through your glutes, pressing the fronts of your hips forward. And we'll hold here 3 breaths. Now you can take your head back a little bit so it follows the curve of your spine. If that feels uncomfortable for you, pull your chin forward and stack your head and gaze forward. The neck can be separate from what the spine is doing here in this pose. Let's take 1 more breath. And as you exhale, pull yourself back up to neutral. And then release the hands from the back. Sweep the arms forward and up. Check to make sure your shoulder blades did not elevate or protract. So I want you to pull them down and back. And then turn to the right side and bring the right fingertips down toward that right heel. Then re-square your pelvis off to the front. Make sure you're not twisting your pelvis to the right, but just your spine. And look down with your gaze over that right shoulder. You might touch your heels, maybe not. And let's take 3 breaths here. So this is our camel with a little bit of rotation. 2 more breaths. And last one. And then reach that arm back up as you turn to face the front. Lower your arms down and press your palms behind you. And then we'll inhale to reach the arms forward without elevating the shoulders. Turn to the left side and drop the left fingertips down toward your heel. Now your other option here is to also support your back like we did with that first camel pose. So you can put your fist or a flat palm or hand at your hip rather than reaching to the heel. Now realign your pelvis forward if you had any twist there, and look down over that left shoulder toward the floor. Making sure shoulder blades are still down and back. And we'll take 2 more breaths. A little squeeze through the glute. Press the frontal hip bones forward. 1 more breath. Reaching up, turn the body to face the front. Inhale. Exhale, dropping the arms. Press them back behind you. And then we'll take 2 more breaths, sweeping the arms forward on the inhale. Shoulder blades are down. Pressing back on the exhale. Squeeze the shoulder blades. 1 more breath. And then we'll come back to our extended child's pose, reaching the arms forward. If your toes are tucked under, you can untuck them. So your option 1 is to stay here in child's pose and to stretch those lats again. Option 2 is to come into downward facing dog. So I want you to notice how far your hands are above your head. Keep them in that position as we tuck the toes. Lift the hips up and then really press back with your chest. So your chest is moving toward your kneecaps. And then make sure that you haven't shrugged your shoulders up next to your ears. So we're going to let them float down and back. And engage the abdominals. Now you can just remain still here if you'd like and really work on the strengthening position of the upper back. You can pedal out your feet or do any options that you'd like to with your down dog. You can also bring your hands to the top of your chair and take your down dog here in that position so there's not as much pressure on your shoulders and on your wrists. Really strengthening. 2 more breaths. And on that second exhalation, if you're in down dog, let your knees return down. And we'll all meet in that extended child's pose. Reaching the forehead down to the mat or your Anahatasana puppy pose. And 2 more breaths here. And then we'll come up and begin to transition to a seated position. Now I do have, we're going to revisit our fish pose, and your option is going to be to use your blanket again if you'd like to do a supported fish rather than a working fish pose. But before we get down into fish, I just want you to sit with knees bent, arms reaching forward, come into shoulder girdle elevation. So I want you to lift and then reverse that and press down as much as you can to create a lot of length in your neck, and then pull your shoulder blades back and hinge your body back a little bit. So this is our Navasana, our boat pose, and there's a lot of work going on in the core, but I want to make sure you're not hunching up or reaching the arms forward. So really drop those shoulder blades down, Pull back. Lean back a little further if you'd like, and see if you can float one or both feet up off the floor and hold Navasana. Abdominals really engaged. Now, sometimes we've done an option of boat pose, holding onto the backs of the legs, and you can certainly still do that, but just make sure you don't hunch and round. Pull those shoulder blades back. Extend the heart upward. 2 more breaths. Feet can be down, knees can be bent or straight. 1 more breath. And then feet come down and sitting up. We're going to take a stretch here for the upper back by using our hands behind us on the mat. And you can just use your fingertips. I don't want you to put a lot of pressure onto your hands. And then start scooting yourself forward any amount until you feel like, ooh, that's a really good stretch there for me. And we'll hold here. Your knees can be bent, your legs can be extended out straight. And hold. Now, if you went too far, scoot your seat back again so that you're not overextending this position. Pull your shoulder blades together so you're activating the muscles of the upper back while you feel this stretch. And we'll hold here 2 more breaths. And 1 more breath in. Walk your hands toward you as you sit up. And then reach forward into a forward bend, just a little counter pose. And then we are going to learn our fish pose to complete our practice today. Again, if you want to use your blanket roll and just do a supported fish like we did at the very beginning of class, you can either place that blanket down the mid back or across the upper back horizontally. But fish pose is kind of an elusive pose. It's one of those where, at least for me, when I was taking yoga classes years ago, it wasn't explained very well, and I really didn't understand how to do it. So I want to really break it down for you today. So come down onto your back with your knees bent. If you have a pretty rounded forward posture, you might like a yoga block or a little towel that you can actually put behind your head a little bit so it's not hanging back too far. And then I'd like you to make a little, it's like a diamond shape with your hands, and you're going to put that diamond underneath your lower back. So push yourself up into a little bit of a bridge and slide your hands underneath that lower back into your little diamond. And then extend your legs out on the mat until they're straight. Now, this might be comfortable or uncomfortable for you. This might be where you stay today in fish. But what we want to do is use the muscles of the back by lifting your chest up off the floor and then tuck your elbows kind of underneath your body. And you might even lift yourself all the way up here to get your elbows underneath you, and then extend your head back and open up through your throat. Now, many options here with fish. You can leave your head suspended and really open up your throat. This is a great pose for stimulation of the thyroid. If that's too far, then be sure that you've got a little bit of a block tucked under the back of your head so you feel supported, or lower down a little bit by separating your elbows out so you're not up so high. And then breathe into the rib cage and into the heart. There's many modifications with fish. So some people do the pose with legs outstretched. Some people do the pose with the legs in Baddha Konasana, soles of the feet together, knees open. Some do the pose without the hands underneath the hips and in legs up the wall position. So wherever you are today, let's hold and breathe. If you need to come out of the pose sooner, feel free to do so. 2 more breaths. Shoulder blades together. 1 more breath. And then to come out of the pose, I'm going to slightly lift my head, separate my elbows a little bit so I can lay myself back down onto the mat. Bend the knees to put your feet flat. Lift up into a little bridge to slide your hands out from underneath the hips. And then pull knees toward your chest into a little counter pose. Now, if in your yoga practice you're a person who does inversions like shoulder stand or plow pose, our fish pose is a nice counter pose for that because it reverses that position of the neck. All right, take your time to come up to seated, either rolling to your side or rocking yourself forward. And let's check in and notice how your posture is feeling. So I want you to just sit tall, sit nice and long, pull the abdominals in, and bring those shoulder blades into depression, pressing them down, and retraction, pulling them back. Now, as we stay into depression and retraction, sometimes posture will interfere with our neck muscles here if we're in poor or faulty posture. So let's keep that retraction and depression and tip your right ear over to your right shoulder. So we're elongating the side of the neck. And then keep this side position over to the right, but just turn your head to look over that right shoulder. Roll your chin down toward your chest. Pull your head back up to neutral alignment. Make sure your shoulder blades are depressed and retracted. Tip your head toward the left side, lengthening the right side of the neck. And then rotate the head so you're looking downward. So we've got lateral flexion and rotation of the neck. Then roll the chin down toward the chest. And bring the head back to neutral. Let's take 1 breath in our W position, our goalpost. Inhale, open through the chest muscles, the fronts of the shoulders, pulling those elbows back. And then just press the palms at heart center, keeping the shoulder blades retracted and down. Close your eyes for a moment, just checking in. Reflecting on your practice, anything that you might have learned today that was a special aha moment that you'd like to carry with you moving forward as you work independently on good posture every single day. And the light, the love, the joy and peace that resides within me honors and respects the light, love, peace, and joy in each of you. Namaste. Thank you so much for joining me, everyone. I hope you really got a lot out of today's practice for working on good posture and alignment. If anyone can stay along and chat for a minute or two, that would be fantastic. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow in cardio strength.